V3-10 is pushed for those that need it.
So now that the search component can filter based on a search term, how do we use the route on the client app component and pass a search term to the search component, so that as we navigate from the landing page to the search results page, we get...
It's because we had that little search box on the landing page. The answer to that question is there's several ways you can do that. You could have probably the app keep track of the landing or the search term, and then it would pass that both into the landing page and the search page, right? So if we go back here to app.jsx, client app.jsx, we would make this a stateful component, and then it would pass the search term both into landing and into search, right? And then it would keep track of it. So in other words, you find a common ancestor, the ancestor keeps track of it and then passes it into both the children. That's how I would do it without using Redux. The real answer to your question is, how are we going to do it? With Redux. So yeah. I guess that kind of segues into just a thought I wanted to say before we left. We're going to build this entire application, besides that, with React and no Redux. React solves almost all of your problems, and Redux is a really big hammer that only sometimes do you need. And I'm going to say as much as rarely need, right? So I do not start building your applications with Redux out of the box, because it adds a lot of complexity to your app. And React solves most of it by itself, right? What I showed you here scales to large applications. To the point that Netflix, we were not using Redux in most of our applications.
Yeah, I guess related to like data fetching without Redux.
How do you do that? So data fetching without Redux. There is a specific section on this. We will go over it. But the answer is inside of your React components. So React can take care of everything that Redux can, 100%, for sure, no problem. Well, I guess problem, right? Eventually you're going to run into a problem, which is where Redux comes in, right?
I mean, I feel like Redux was like, it was so new and cool, and everybody wants to reach for the cool, new, like, complex thing. And like versus like looking at what is it solving and why do I need it first. It's just like kind of the cult bandwagon.
Definitely. Well, it eventually got to the point where you just said React Redux, right? Like they just kind of like went together in the same breath, and that's not fair. Like React really stands on its own. Like if you talk to like Ryan Florence, again one of the authors of React Router, he said that he literally never uses Redux and he always just uses React. I'm not too far away from that. There is a point where I will use Redux, and we'll definitely address more of that when we get to Redux. But I want to show you that you can build a big application just with React, and most of the time that's okay. There's a great blog post from Dan Abramoff called "You Might Not Need Redux," and so that's a good one to read as well.
Even for like scalable apps.
For sure. You can write pretty big applications in React with no Redux. React is like the state management thing where I showed you here in search. This scales to large applications, for sure.
There's more questions from chat.
Cool.
First, a funny comment. He said, "I also got a job because of version 2. And I'll sell the new version 3 stuff that I'm seeing tomorrow at my work."
That's awesome.
What about nested arrays of objects which contain nested arrays of objects? Normalizer?
Yeah, there's a library called Normalizer, or there's like a Redux normalizer. There's several ways to normalize that, which is basically to say like take crazy structures of data and turn them into a usable sort of data. There's a bunch of ways to do that. Redux has different ways of doing it. You don't necessarily need Redux to do that, though.
This one's an es6 question about arrow functions. I don't
Sure.
know.
Go
I'd
ahead.
say that one probably should look at Kyle Simpson's es6 the right parts if you've got questions on arrow functions, because Kyle Simpson lays it in glorious detail in his course.
Yeah, way better than I do, for sure. I watch his courses so I can tell you the same things.
Will we cover hooking up our client-side app to a backend or server-side?
Yeah, so you saw the ratings API thing that I built for you? That's inside of the app. We'll definitely be hooking up to our fake API.
Yes, all of these last-minute Q&As will be available to watch tonight. There's a few people throwing in RxJS into chat, but I didn't really see a good time to really talk about it, but using Rx with React.
So I love RxJS. It's crazy awesome, and you should definitely watch Joffre's course on Frontend Masters if you're interested in Rx stuff. Or Kyle's, right? Either one of those are really good.
Yeah, and he just recorded last Saturday an advanced asynchronous programming in JavaScript, which covers more real-world applications of Rx.
Perfect. So as far as it directly applied to React, I would say that there is no special place that it goes in React. In other words, you would use Rx in React as you would in any other program, and there's no special hook into it. Like there's no React RX or anything like that as far as I know, or as far as I would want to use. So like you could have like an observable emitting Ajax client or a WebSocket client, but that would not be any different for React than it would for anything else.
I think the point is that React just renders the data, right?
Yeah.
However you're dealing with the data and handlers and stuff could be handled by Rx.
Exactly. Yep.
And once the observable kicks out data, then you would want to render that data to a component.
Right.
Another question, any thoughts on using GraphQL with React? I mean, I think that's the same thing where you're just pulling the data and rendering it to a component, right?
It's a tiny bit more opinionated, so I considered covering it today, but covering GraphQL would be literally a full nother day. The cool thing about using GraphQL with React is that you can make components declare their own data dependencies. So basically your component says, I require username and first name and last name from the API. And then as you build up your component tree, at the top level, you'll gather all of the queries and then send that to GraphQL and then feed that back down through your tree. So basically, the fact that you're including a component will then be sending that data to an API, and the API will be automatically feeding that back down into the component. It's really slick. It's declarative data dependencies. I did some helping with Falcor, which is the Netflix version of that, and you can do a similar thing as well with Falcor. It's really cool. It's really slick. And then GraphQL is the name of the language that you declare those dependencies in, and then Relay is the name of the service. Relay or Apollo are the two big ones that you feed that to. So yeah, a whole nother course, really cool, but we're not going to talk about it.
Sounds like another author, or you should come back and do that.
Not me. I think it's really cool. I don't know too much about it though. But yes, there definitely should be a course on GraphQL.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we've had like 4 authors propose GraphQL, but it's like GraphQL on Angular, GraphQL on Express, GraphQL.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many different contexts of using it and ways to teach it, so we might have to do multiple courses.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyways, with that, I don't see any other questions in chat. Now is your last chance before we go to day 2.
Yeah.
Break for day 2.
Do we need to do any server-side rendering, or can we just do it all client-side for React?
The answer to that question is it depends on what your needs are, right? Certainly server-side rendering yields a lot of benefits. It's great for SEO. It's faster, right? It's perceived to be faster to the user. There's a bunch of stuff about that that's really cool. But it also does add some complexity to your app. You have to make sure that everything works in both in Node and in the browser. You have to be using Node. That's another layer of complexity. So you just need to, it's trade-offs, right? You got to make the right trade-offs for it. And we'll definitely, we'll be doing server-side rendering maybe by the end of tomorrow. And you'll get to experience those trade-offs firsthand.
Okay, but we can run this like on a server like a CMS or something that didn't have Node installed on it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, definitely. There's a bunch of companies out there that are running React in production right now with no server-side rendering.